as a first responder and that type A personality, and, it speaks, there's something that speaks to your soul. The truth has a certain ring to it. And when I can take someone's recovery and paint that picture for them, they're like, yeah, man, it's a hero's journey. I'm like, it absolutely is. But you can't get caught in the abyss. You can't keep refusing the call. This is where guys get stuck, refusing the call. And sometimes, especially for us, we got to be in a lot of pain, man. Pain is a good teacher. I've heard that before. That's not mine.
But you're adopting it well.
So totally. Pain's a part of life. Suffering is optional. You want to suffer or you want to get well?
This episode is brought to you by Trident Coffee, the veteran-owned brand where every sip inspires you to live life full steam ahead. I've been drinking their coffees for a while now, and I'm glad to partner with a company whose products I use. At Trident, they're more than just coffee. They're storytellers. Crafted by veterans, their instant cold brew is perfect for those who serve, those who have served, and anyone who values wellness. Featuring natural ingredients like organic mushrooms, adaptogens, and nootropics, it's more than just a morning pick-me-up. It's your new wellness ritual. Enjoy it at home or on the go, wherever your day takes you. Trident Coffee isn't just about great tasting coffee. It's about empowering you to be the healthiest version of yourself, because great veterans make great citizens. Try their instant cold brew today, along with many other coffee products, and taste the freedom of wellness. Remember, when you choose Trident, you're not just choosing coffee, you're choosing a path of connection through health and wellness. Head on over to tridentcoffee.com and use the promo code TDP15 for 15% off your order. Again, that's TDP15 for 15% off your order. This episode is brought to you by Soflete, a tactical fitness company founded by special operations soldiers. Soflete is dedicated to helping you achieve a healthy lifestyle. From expertly crafted training programs to high-quality proteins, pre-workouts, and sleep and recovery supplements, they've got everything you need to power through your day. Soflete also has a full line of clothing. They have you covered from shorts to cold weather gear. Embracing the motto, Die Living, Soflete inspires us all to embrace life with vigor and resilience. So take the first step towards a healthier you. Visit soflete.com, that's SOFLETE.com, and use the promo code TDP20 to get 20% off your order. Again, that's TDP20 for 20% off your order. Hey, welcome back, everyone. My guest this time is a former firefighter. He came from a family of service, but he chose the, as he put it, to squirt water route. In our conversation, we talk about the trauma that he experienced growing up and brought with him to the table that is being a firefighter. We also talk about the trauma that comes from doing the job and the impact that it had on his life, not only mentally, but physically. After 22 years, he was forced to give it up, but not before a ruined marriage, some periods of deep and dark depression, and as I said, injuries to both his neck and his back. Today, he's working with Dr. Gina Gallivan and her group for first responder wellness. He's also working on starting his own nonprofit to give back to veterans and first responders. But I'm going to leave the rest of the story to him. So let's get into it. Here's episode 153 with Matty Fiorenza. X-rays today. Is that related to your back?
My neck.
What happened to your neck?
I had 2 discs replaced in my neck.
Related to the back or completely separate?
Like just the job, related to the job.
Damn.
Yeah.
How far? So I know you've had surgery on your back.
Yeah, I had lower back surgery in 2015.
Have you had surgery on your neck too?
Yes. Yeah. Last year.
Damn.
Last year. So, well, it was February actually, so it hasn't even been a year. I think that was my 6-month checkup.
Just seeing you walking around, nothing would jump out at me like, whoa, that dude's had back and neck surgery.
Yeah. No, I've recovered pretty well for the most part. The lower back was bad just because it's your lower extremities and it affects, walking and bending over and I wasn't healthy at all at the time. This time I was mentally healthy, physically healthy. I went into it, with, a totally different outlook. You know what I mean? I was like, okay, I like research stuff. I listened to people that I did listen to. There was I think she was a diver or swimmer. forget her name, but she had the same exact surgery, and she did like a whole tutorial on YouTube, like before and after. And so I took some of that advice, and I saw the way she was getting around, and I prayed about it, and I got into the mental space that, this is going to work. Everything's going to be great. And, that the day of the surgery, they replaced 2 discs in my neck, and I immediately had relief from the symptoms I was having, and I'm a sober guy. So I only had to take the medication for about 4 days, and then I was done with it. And, there was no complications there. And, that was my biggest concern, because I'm in recovery. I really didn't want to take the meds, I didn't want to feel like that. But it was pretty awesome. Like I talked to my therapist about it, and my sponsor, and everything went really well. And I was out of the soft neck brace within like a week, and driving a couple weeks out, and I was in Kauai. They said don't surf. I'm like, okay, but I was in Kauai about a month later, snorkeling.
Surfing's not great in Kauai, right?
Some spots.
It's not known for its surfing.
No, it's just it's very local, and some of the spots you got to really paddle out to.
Up in Princeville, right?
Princeville in Honolulu Bay, but that's where all the tiger sharks are. So. But yeah, he's like, don't surf. I'm like, okay, that's cool.
How long were you dealing with the injury or the pain before you had surgery?
Oh man, a couple of years, and I was in the work comp process. And to be quite honest, I was transitioning out of the fire service, and all these injuries, I had PTS and the neck stuff and the lower back stuff, and undiagnosed TBI, which a lot of us have, that I learned through SPECT scans at the Amen clinics. And so I was so tired of that whole process, and we can get into a little bit about that, my passion to fill in the gaps, because it is necessary, but it's a broken system, so I was tired of it. So I went in, I said, look, just pay me off. I want to be done with it. I'm paying all this money for my own health insurance, which has been my biggest expense in retirement. And I just took care of it through my own insurance, and I got an MRI right away. I got a great doctor right away. Everything happened right away. And so I just took care of it on my own. So it was causing me a lot of pain, and they were like denying me naproxen. It was ridiculous. I didn't get any epidurals. I was just tired of fighting. I just wanted to surrender to win, It's
sad that so many of us, when we deal with our workers' comp type stuff, and I understand that they have a process they have to go through.
Right.
But man, that process is always so slow.
It is.
Hernias, where I had a double hernia surgery, and it's like you have to go to their prescribed clinic to get approval to go to their prescribed specialist. Yeah. And then when I went to the specialist, he found the second one, which caused me to go back all the way through the process again, back to the clinic. And it's just like the bureaucracy of it.
Yeah.
It just drags everything out.
It's brutal. And when it comes to mental health, there are guys sitting at home already disconnected from the tribe, struggling with the mental health stuff, may or may not be, abusing substances or alcohol. And then they get a denial letter. That's fatal for a lot of our guys. And it's heartbreaking. And that's some of the stuff I'm doing now is to fill those gaps. I mean, I was just at a outpatient treatment center that I'm doing some work at. And, I had a guy come in, I convinced him to come in just to see what the groups were like. And he came in today, and he's just this system of false beliefs that a lot of guys have, is like, I'm like, dude, if you fell off a ladder and you broke your arm, would you feel guilty about taking time off and letting the agency pay for your recovery? And he's like, no. I'm like, it's the same thing, man. And he's like, well, no, it's not. And I'm, these guys I'm like, well, you're the one I don't say this, but it's like, you're the one in the seat, man. You're the one that can't sit still. I could tell, dude, you're not comfortable in your own skin. Your wheels are spinning, and you need help, man. And I love you, and I want to, and I just got the call before I came in here that he agreed to sign up for the program. And
very cool.
Yeah. So that always makes me happy, because I don't want my brothers and sisters in service to suffer. And, it's because of my own suffering, and I was able to get on the other side of it and use all that I've learned through my own experience to help other guys. And one of those things was going through the work comp process,
That's the worst part of our jobs, is that they draw a very type A personality. And for the injuries that are not visible, I would say it's almost like a two-pronged effect in the sense that we ourselves don't want to appear weak, so we won't admit to it. And then, even though I believe the culture is changing, historically the culture has been, if you can't see the injury, then it doesn't really exist.
Right.
Why are you complaining about it?
Right. Yeah. And I mean, man, we can dig so deep on this thing, but you see a lot of false physical injuries, guys faking or whatever, a physical injury because they have mental issues and they just want the time off,
Right.
and that adds to it. And then the system, because so many people take advantage of it, everybody's under scrutiny and being investigated. And, I've heard horror stories of especially officers. Like I had an officer friend who had someone following him. It's like, these people are trained to identify when someone is following him, and she was scared, and I think she drew down on the guy, which is cool. Not for him, but, it's just a broken system. And there are some really good people out there that are trying to make it better. There are ways. I just don't feel like our culture, as far as first responders, needs to be in a work comp system. I think there's a better way of doing it. I mean, I know there's a lot of bureaucracy that goes along, like with the VA and stuff like that, but I know that veterans have a place to go, and it would be nice if there was something out there where these guys could go to get the help that they needed for their physical injuries and their, and the thing is that we know now that it's a brain injury. Yeah. PTSD is a brain injury, and you can heal from it. And it's not, we're not taught that in the beginning. We're getting better at it. I've been to the Basic Fire Academy. I worked for the college for a little while teaching these guys, like, this is what can happen to you. And it could be, if you take care of it right away on the front end and do some preventative things that aren't in the, in the manual of, lifting weights and lifting ladders or shooting your weapon or whatever. These are like meditation and going inward and doing self-care, which, guys, it's like going to the river with your family and packing them up. That's great, but that's not self-care. You know what I mean? Like real self-care, like being introspective and taking the time out. It's just not in our, especially type A, we're like, go, force it. And that could be really dangerous, if you start struggling mentally. And I've seen it, guys. It's like, I'm crying. It's like, oh, you're human. You know what I mean? That was a sad call.
Right.
You know what I mean? I don't know what's wrong with me. It's like, there's nothing wrong with you.
You're experiencing a segment of society, or things that a segment of society never sees.
Right.
And the worst thing we have, in talking a lot to the veterans that I've had on the podcast, mm-hmm. but even for many of us in the first responder community, we come to it at a very young age.
Right.
In the grand scheme of things, we have no life experience.
Right.
And now you're putting us in situations that 99% of society will never experience.
Right.
And expecting us at 23 years old to be able to process this.
Right. Without even having your prefrontal cortex online yet. The pause button isn't even working in your brain, which is probably why they take us. But, and like I said, I've been in this space for about 10 years, and a lot of us have childhood trauma as well. So we don't have life experience, but we've got, we have some experiences. They call them the adverse childhood experiences, which is the ACEs, which is making a comeback, which is great. There's a lot of research done that is valuable to determining mental health issues and physical, medical issues as well. And that's the measuring stick we started to use at a combat veteran suicide prevention program that took first responders, called Save a Warrior, which is where I got the start of my recovery. When I ended up going to this program, and a bunch of combat veterans came back for me and told me, hey man, it's not what happened on the mean streets of Anaheim. It's what happened to you when you were a little kid. And my mind was blown, and sitting in a group of men that I just met, the night before, sharing things about my childhood that I swore I would take to my grave. And they're like, that's what's killing you, buddy. And you know what? I did it. And I felt better, so a lot of us come into the careers with our nervous systems already on fire, and all this stuff that's unconscious and subconscious now that, I tell guys, like, your body remembers. There's a lot of good information out there. One of the books that's the Bible for trauma is The Body Keeps the Score by Dr. Vanderkolk, and our bodies remember. So when something we experience on a call that, you know, and through my own recovery and my own therapy, has realized that they're connected, you know, the calls that stay stuck, or, you know, cause I could tell you about a million terrible calls that I've been on, but they don't affect me physiologically the way certain calls do, you know? And it was until I had that level of awareness and then started to do my own therapy and working through those things, where that physiological response becomes less and less and less. And it's like I said, if you would have told me, you know, 15 years ago, man, you do a little equine therapy, you're going to feel better, I would have been like, what are you talking about? Right. And that's how a lot of guys are like, I've never heard, like, even to this day, when I go speak across the country and I ask people, who in here has ever heard of EMDR? Like, I still have people go, I don't know what that is, you know? And to me, people need to know what these different modalities are, and listen, talk to their brothers and sisters. And, cause it doesn't work for everybody. Some things work for some, you know, there's not a one pill fix for this stuff. So I think education is a big part of it. And that's what I do with a police psychologist in LA, Dr. Gina Gallivan. We build wellness programs and we do trainings, and we do more than just peer support trainings. That's just scratching the surface. You know, it's about educating these folks as to what there's science behind this stuff. You know, it's not just all woo woo, and getting them to acknowledge it. First of all, we all know the problem now. Like, everybody knows the problem. And like we were talking about earlier, right? We know the war stories. Like, we can sit here and talk war stories all day. Like, that's what we're used to doing around the table, or, you know, in the car with each other. We tell
that's our masking agent.
Exactly. It's like, you know, I tell guys who walks into the firehouse in the morning and says, hey, hey brother, I'm in a lot of fear this morning. It's like, but that's what needs to be done, you know? And I use the example, I was going on a call, and it was a motorcycle down, and the guy had been thrown into traffic. And I remember my partner, who's a good friend of mine, looking at me and just saying, Matty, I don't like these kind of calls. And I was like, I don't either, brother. And just like that, I felt better. And so did he. And we went and we did our thing, and it was done. You know what I mean? But just that acknowledgement with another human being, especially on the job, that this sucks, man. You know, just that alone is progress for our culture.
If we're following in line with the veteran community, the silver lining that I'm taking from this is the veteran community has really gotten behind the importance of addressing PTS and all the trauma that they're experiencing. And they do get the lion's share of the media attention.
Right.
I'm okay with that because it helps us all. But the positive side of it is every day there's more and more of that attention coming more to the first responder community.
Right.
And so we're still lagging.
Yeah.
But we're definitely improving. Absolutely.
I agree. Absolutely. The conversations I have, even with the risk managers, and, you know, I've sat across the table from HR risk managers. I sat in a room of, all the chiefs, from a fire department in Southern California, after they hired me to speak there and do some mental health stuff, that said, what's the temperature? What can we do better? How are we doing? What do we do about this? Like I was the, it's funny to me because, you know, they didn't know what to do with me in the fire department that I worked for a little while, you know what I mean? They did the best they could with what they had. Like, I get it. And it's like, you know, I was like a problem child for a while. And now I'm sitting in this room with all these chief officers, and they're asking me these questions, and it's awesome. It's absolutely awesome. And I've had that particular fire department with questions call me, you know, in the middle of the night and say, hey, we got a guy and this is what's going on with them. And what do we do? You know, and I say, okay, this is what we do. And like I said, it's just through my own experience, in dealing with these things that I've kind of become the expert, you know, on how to get these guys help, and how to, you know, and, you know, one of my favorite is, that particular department had a guy who did something that was out of character, you know, and it was like, I said, look, all that stuff aside, this, you didn't hire this guy. He's got a great character. He did something out of character. Okay, there's consequences for that, but let's get this guy help. And that's exactly what that they did. And that guy is thriving.
Sweet.
You know, and we saved a life, right? Because, I mean, in my experience, when it's all punitive and you send a guy home and he's got PTS, the voices get loud, you know? So, and that's my intention. Whenever I think about why I do certain things, why I come here and talk to you, why I take those phone calls from guys and take that time away from my family, it's because, I want to be a part of the solution to the suicide epidemic, and I got a taste of that in the veteran community when those guys came back for me, because they took first responders. I mean, it's 70% of the guys that go there are veterans. And so I learned a lot in that space. And like I said, it doesn't matter what uniform we're wearing. Trauma's trauma. Our brains don't know, and we're all cut from the same cloth for the most part, veterans and first responders, right?
100%. Yeah. At the end of the day, these professions, for, I believe, the greater majority, if you want to call it a calling, we are drawn to them for some reason.
Yeah.
We don't just kind of go, oh, you know what? I threw 10 applications. Let me throw an application over here. We usually are kind of like all our eggs in one basket.
Right.
We're going this way.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's a calling. I was talking to the guys at the center today, and we were talking. I said, let's be real. It took a while for me to dig down, but I became a firefighter because I wanted to be a hero. And I wanted to get paid well, and I had a high school diploma and a fire science degree. You know what I mean? And my dad was a cop, and and it just goes back from veteran to veteran to veteran. And that's the family business. Like, call it a calling or whatever. But it's in the genes. And I got that childhood trauma, and I wanted to be a hero. I wanted to wear the uniform. Like, they're like, "Whoa, Matty!" I'm like, yeah, that's helping people and helping the community and being of service, and that stuff is, that's part of it as well. But if I have to really look deep and really be honest with myself, I wanted to save the world. I wanted people to give me accolades. I wanted to wear a fancy uniform and be the hero, right? I mean, I used to watch Platoon and play Army as a kid. That was the cool thing to do.
There's something about being the knight on the white horse, riding is saving the day, man.
Right? Which is a double-edged sword. Mm-hmm. Right? And I think that's part of your message, right? Is that when we identify with this career for a long time and it's taken from you, whether voluntarily or involuntarily, if you're not set up properly, it could be disastrous. Well,
you made a good segue, so let's take you back. Mm-hmm. Where's hometown? Where'd you grow up?
Wow. I grew up all over Southern California. My dad was a Marine. He was Orange County Sheriff's deputy, Sergeant, Medal of Valor, but with that comes along of, divorce and abuse, but.
Was he already out of the Marine Corps when you were born?
Yes. Yeah. He was a Vietnam vet. Yeah. He was already on the sheriff's department. And so he, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom, so Irish, Italian, Catholic family, like typical. And
box check.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And so they got divorced when I was 3 months old, and there was a lot of everything that comes along with divorce and that, and it was tough on both sides, and so there was an incident between my mom and him when I was about 6 years old, and so I didn't get to see him until I was 18. I went to look for him. So with that came along stepdads and just my mom trying to do the best she could. And so we moved around a lot. I grew up very poor. I lived in Pomona, Montclair, La Puente, Baldwin Park. I'm a blue-eyed, blonde-haired kid.
Whereabouts in Baldwin Park?
Dude, I can't even remember. It was.
Did you go to school while you were?
Francisquito, yeah.
Did you go to school while you were there?
Well, here's the good part. My grandparents are like angels. And so I went to Catholic school. So I went to a Catholic school in Claremont, California. So I didn't have to switch schools, which was, it was good. It was good to be able to, not only just for my faith, the Catholics introduced me to God, and that helped. As a kid, I remember having a strong spiritual connection because I was in a lot of scary situations. So growing up like that, I was bullied a lot. I was sexually abused, physically abused, mentally abused. And so, I ran away from home when I was 13. I moved in with my sister who lived in Altaloma, California.
Assuming she's old, obviously older than
8 years older. Yeah. Yeah. So she was married and she gave me a place to stay, but I had no one was telling me what to do. But I always like showed up for school. Like I did the best I could. I mean, I was in a punk rock band. I ran with some, I drank alcohol and so, I met a girl. I actually got a scholarship to go to the University of Laverne. And so I was, so
you were decently well in academics then? Or was it sports?
No, I mean, I quit the football team. I went to all boys Catholic high school, Damien High School.
I went to Bishop Belmont.
Did you? Yeah. I went there for a year and I lost my position to a kid whose parents bought the school a bus. And I didn't have, my mom barely could pay the tuition. So, I got a bad taste in my mouth. It really bummed me out. And so I didn't have a lot of support at home. So I quit the football team. I started playing ice hockey in Ontario but it was definitely more academic than it was because I got decent grades, and truth be told, my mom was a receptionist at a bank and, the president of the bank was alumni and he helped me, so, I went there for a year and, I got nervous. I'm like, the loans went up and the grant went down. I was like, I don't want to be a doctor or a teacher or, some of the things that were coming out of that school. And so, I met a girl whose mom was a purchasing agent for the Forest Service. And I fell in love with this girl and her mom was always talking about base camp and fire camp and firefighters, and I was an explorer for the sheriff's department in San Bernardino for a short period of time. And I kind of got away from that. I almost joined the Marine Corps, but when I was like, man, the fire service, like I never thought about that. So I stopped hanging out with those people, and I put the alcohol down and some of the other things that I was doing. And I wanted to marry this girl and I wanted to be a firefighter. So at a young age, 19 years old, I was like, okay, like, what do I need to do? So, I had, a small mortgage. We bought a little condo and I took one class. Like I worked for an engineering company in San Dimas and I took one class and, I'd go to work, I'd go to the gym afterwards and I'd go to school, take one or two classes. So it took me from the time I decided to be a firefighter to the time I got a probation, it was about 6-7 years. And I always tell people like, what they call people? I go to school for 7 years. Doctor. I didn't have that kind of degree, bro. Right. So,
what year was this? Or years were these?
So in the 90s, the late 90s, I went to the Basic Fire Academy.
So really hard getting on the fire department.
Oh, big time. That was back then. I was waiting in line with 8,000 people in Long Beach. Remember, like it was really, really difficult. So I was pretty lucky. I mean, I took 50 tests all over, up and down the state, in other states, Vegas and Tucson and Tempe. And, I went anywhere anyone was there was like this thing called firecareers.com. And I would sit at my job and I would pull that thing up all the time just to see, if I was qualified. So,
you mentioned that you looked at the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
Did it get further than literally just going to, did you even go to like a recruiting office?
Yeah, I did. And, I talked to him and
just not for you.
Yeah. I just, I don't know. What's funny is when I went to, I think I was scared. Yeah, I was scared. And, but there was a lot of regret there, man. Like even today, like I ended up at Save a Warrior. My roommate was a Marine and he's a dear friend of mine, like a brother today, like I have relationships with men today that are like really deep and very important. And he's one of them. And, I remember telling him there, man, I felt guilty for not, and I remember him telling me, bro, we went for a period of time to Afghanistan and Iraq and we came back. Dude, you've been doing it for 15 years, 16 years, man. Like you've been protecting home, and that was cool. It made me feel pretty good, but yeah, I still have some,
if I'm reading the tea leaves correctly, and I'm putting myself in the same basket, and I don't mean this in any way to be disrespectful, and I appreciate it when people say it, but they call us heroes, and we get clumped into that group of heroes. But then for us, we look at those who have actually deployed overseas. They're the heroes. Right. There's that little part of, I'll say you and I together, that they've been to the big show.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
And I get it. It's a stupid way of looking at it because every one of us has experienced stuff in different ways that is heroic.
Right.
But I think for us, we start comparing ourselves.
Sure. No, absolutely. Absolutely did. And even showing up at that program, I felt like I was not worthy. You know, I felt like there was a combat veteran that needed to be in that seat. And they quickly, told me everybody says that.
Yeah.
They're
like, shut up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, you earned that seat, and so, what I did was, I volunteered for that program for 3.5 years. That's how I paid it forward. And I just met some incredible people, that are still, I had a guy that I shepherded his cohort, just the other day. Like I talk to him every once in a while, and this was like probably 5 years ago. He's like, I want your address. I want to invite you to my wedding. I'm like, wow, that hits different for me. That's what it's all about right there. Like I was able to, God used me in that space to make an impact on this guy enough to take his life back, like someone did for me, where he wants to invite me to his wedding. Man, that's like sacred. And that's what it's all about. I tell guys, look, I never once had one person come back to the station and thank me for XYZ, nor did I expect it. Right. But nothing's better than helping a guy when he's at his worst in crisis, watching him get well, and then watching him help another person. There's nothing better. And I've got to see that for over the last, 5-6 years, like come to fruition. And it's, it heals us.
Taking you back to something you said where you didn't have a relationship with your biological father, but you went and found him when you were 18.
Yeah.
But before that point, 13 years old, ran away from home, you're living with your sister.
Mm-hmm.
I'll put that as close to coming off the rails, but did you actually ever get to a point in what you deem as off the rails for a young man?
Oh yeah. I mean, just in that time was, I was running with bad guys. Like I said, I quit the football team and I found the guys that listened to punk rock music, did drugs, drank beer, and I ran with that crew. Those were my people, and
I guess where I'm going with it, nothing ever that got close enough that could have completely derailed your adult life.
Absolutely. I always had a spidey sense about me for whatever reason. My intuition is very strong. It's still to this day, I use it for good and not for evil. But there were times where I was at parties, you know what I mean, where guys were doing things they shouldn't be doing, where I just got a feeling like, get out of here. You know what I mean? Get out of here. And I would leave and then hear, yeah, the cops showed up and, and they found this or that. And, guys got in trouble. But I mean, I was like, because I got stuff stolen from, I got bullied as a kid. Like I was never a criminal like that. You know what I mean? It was more like hanging out, partying, drinking, smoking weed, stuff like that. I never was like a thief or like hurt anybody. That was just not my nature,
The reason why I ask that is because it's interesting for me doing my own unofficial study of guests because I was in the same boat.
Mm-hmm.
Started my senior year of high school with a 1.97 GPA, doing everything I could to smoke weed, drink with my friends at school.
Right.
But I always knew where that line was. And I firmly believe, going back to what we were talking about, like where the first responder veteran is a calling for some people. Mm-hmm. For those of us who were, if you compare us to all of our other cohort of high school students, we were definitely the bad ones.
Right.
But within the bad ones, we knew where, hey, we can't go that far.
Yeah.
And I think it's that little piece of us that draws us to that first responder community.
Yeah, I think you're right.
We know what it is to be bad. Right. We're just not going to let ourselves go all the way there.
That bad. Yeah. Yeah. When guys were getting involved in criminal stuff, I didn't get involved in that stuff. You know what I mean? But yeah, I agree with you. I think there's, and what's funny is I thought that they were all choir boys on the fire department.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it turns out,
yes, first responders are all good guys.
I mean, I thought that, I thought that, and I legitimately thought that these guys were all straight laced, never, maybe had a couple beers or whatever, but I found out quickly that they were all just like me, you know?
We're all knuckleheads at heart.
Totally.
We are all knuckleheads at heart.
Right.
The other avenue that I wanted to go with you on this is, now that you've had the lapse around the sun to look back, you didn't know your biological dad. You mentioned there were stepfathers in your life and abuse, but looking back on it now, was there anybody in your life that was a mentor or somebody kind of at least putting the right words in your ear? Maybe if you were consciously or subconsciously ignoring what they were saying?
Man, that's a great question. I love that. I think there were, I think that I had some teachers along the way, you know, like I said, my faith was always very strong. I got away from it for a long time. Don't get me wrong. But I think that relationship with God and that intuition, that's the Spidey sense, right? That was this is wrong. You know what I mean? I think I tapped into that a lot. I have an uncle, my mom's brother, who, was in Vietnam as well. He was in the Army. He actually, I went back to my dad's grave to grieve and mourn him properly. This is one of the things that I told myself I would do after I left Save a Warrior, because I had this resentment against this dead man. And I went and did that. My uncle actually showed up, and Jay, my Marine buddy, and a couple other veterans, where I was able to grieve and mourn him properly. And my uncle was there, which was super cool. And he told me, and I never knew this, but my uncle Ricky, who was my dad's brother, joined the Marines and followed my dad to Vietnam, and he didn't make it back. He died at 19 over there. And my uncle told me, my uncle was a grenadier, like doing patrols in the jungle. Like the guy was in it. And he was asked to escort my uncle Ricky's body, because he was family back from Vietnam to the States. And he did that. And I guess he knew that if he wasn't, like, they just kind of lost track of him. And he knew that if after a certain amount of days, they wouldn't send him back, and they didn't. And, I never was open to hearing stories like that. And he told me that story that day, and it just struck me that my uncle Ricky's death could have possibly saved my uncle Chuck's life. And I always looked up to my Uncle Chuck, and like he would tell me, like he wouldn't get into detail, but I was always so interested in what happened over there, and I didn't have my dad telling me. So I would say he was definitely one of the guys, and he did real estate. You know, he came back from the Vietnam War, and he was healthy. He had, at
least on the surface.
Yeah. For sure. He does get to this, like when we talk about it this day, he gets emotional, and we've had amazing conversations about it, like more man to man than when I was a kid. But he was a Christian. He helped start churches. He did mission work. He did commercial, or he did real estate. He had a real estate company, and he's built a beautiful, these houses in Temecula here where they shave off the top of the hill, and he built a home out here in wine country. It's out there somewhere. And I just, to this day, like I love that man, and I appreciate his wisdom. And so he was definitely one of those people. But, for the most part, But
you think about it as one little piece of the overall puzzle.
Yeah.
You just said that your dad had his younger brother follow him into the military and then didn't come home. From the trauma aspect, that had to be 1,000 tons of bricks that your dad walked around with on his shoulder every single day of his life.
Yeah. I wish I could have a conversation with him. And I think, every time there's the Orange County Sheriff's Department has popped up in my story a couple times. And I just feel like he's an angel up there now. And I understand what he went through. I mean, he went through a gnarly divorce. He was a Vietnam vet. I learned through my own therapy, like my grandparents on that side, my grandmother was a narcissist, and that being raised by a narcissist that alone is traumatic. My dad died at 53, had a massive heart attack in his backyard cleaning his golf shoes. He was still on the job. My Uncle Ricky died at 19 in Vietnam. My Auntie Nor killed herself. And my Aunt Liz was a drug addict who got a brain tumor and died of cancer. So my grandparents outlived all four of their children. And I never really had much connection to that side of the family. Like those grandparents never really cared to be a part of my life as well. So, yeah, man, that guy, and then he's got the Medal of Valor because he had to kill somebody in Silverado Canyon, after the guy shot his partner. So he was held up with this guy. Like, he had PTS. Like, yes. So I get it. Cause most of my memories of him were scary. Right. He smoked Camel non-filters, man. He still carried a Smith & Wesson. Like he never had like a 9mm. He was just an old school cowboy, So, I wish I could, and I hope someday to see him, in the afterlife and have conversations with him. But, he did the best he could with what he had. Absolutely. And as much as I hated him, quote unquote, there were parts of me that still wanted to be like him, and I'm grateful for that.
I've said this to other people too. The relationship that I had with my father went completely south about the time I was 13. Mm-hmm. From 13 through high school, all we did was butt heads. There was never a point that there was a good part of our relationship.
Yeah.
And the only time it actually got better was the last 2 months that he was alive, that he spent in the hospital, when he was battling cancer.
Right.
And like you, I look forward to meeting him again just to have conversations. Yeah. To, as an adult, have a conversation with my dad as an adult.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, there are things about him that he taught me not to be like.
Right.
But as a father, he dedicated himself to being a dad.
Yeah. 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 I think that's life, right? We try to be better than the generation before, but at some point we all get shattered, and we try to take the pieces back of ourselves that are our true self, the person that God, made us to be. That's how I look at it. And, and some good, some bad, but I think we'll have those conversations someday. And it was funny. I was doing my training, and, the therapist that I work with, Dr. Gina Gallivan, she said, "What's funny, Matty?" And I never put two and two together. She's like, that these men, these combat veterans, these men helped heal the wounds of your father, and I'm like, they did, and that's one of the biggest, most important things I learned at Save a Warrior was that, is that you have to have men in your life that hold you accountable, that don't judge you, that there's, that are rowing the same canoe, that have what you want, not physical things, but you know what I mean? That are good fathers and good, good men, and I did that, and it's made all the difference. Because I was abused by men. Like, I was in competition with you. I didn't want what you had. I got this. I can do that. And that's, the first responder culture kind of breeds that, and it's a cesspool of that in a little ways. But when I look back and I think of the guys who promoted, and they had a group of mentors, and I was really resistant to that in my career, which was, unfortunate, but I learned it later in life, and I have men in my life that I can call today and say, "Hey man, I'm in a lot of fear. I'm struggling, or there's a block here, and I know it's me. Can you help me to get this accomplishment that I want to? And please hold me accountable." And they do, They don't co-sign my BS, and they, and it really has made all the difference, having those relationships with other men.
The biggest thing is getting to a point in your life where you take the ownership of your failures, your mistakes, your successes, everything else, but stop putting the blame on others.
Right.
Where you start understanding that if you're going to get somewhere, the success is going to be yours, but the failures are also yours also too.
Absolutely. And the way you look at those, your perception of those, are you going to play the victim and keep whining about it? Or are you going to do something about it? You're going to use it to learn. And I've had plenty of failures and plenty of relationships, go sideways with people that I thought really cared for me, and it hurts. And I say, what can I learned this, that, and the other from these people. And I learned what not to do and what to do. And you can always, it's all perception, right? And that's where these men are always constantly, it's like, Matty, you had a part in everything. right? You had a part in it. Let's see what your part was. You know, were you acting out of fear or self-centeredness or was it self? And let's take a look at those things and let's make amends if we need to, and bury that resentment, because that's just a block, you know. And these are the kind of men that I run with today. And you're absolutely right. I think it's about being introspective, and when we decide. I was talking to the guys today about this whole midlife crisis thing. I think most people, men in particular, get to a point in their life where they go, okay, I've done it all. I'm here. I got this. I got that. But there's why? What's the purpose? And you can go down getting the divorcing the wife, getting the 20-year-old girlfriend, buying the Corvette or whatever. You could go down that road and still end up, asking yourself that question 10 years from now. Or you can go like what I did. What can I do to make the world a better place? What can I do for my brothers and sisters? I could take all my suffering and I can use it for good, and that's what I've done. And it's happened organically, and it's every day it's something different. And I really got to practice what I preach, because there's a lot of unknowns but it's that those questions are answered. I know what my purpose is. I thought I was to be a firefighter, paramedic, and, retire a captain and, have a condo in Maui and, the Raptor and and that didn't happen, but, that's okay, because I feel like, I've transitioned out of the fire department and I know what my purpose is. And a lot of guys don't have that gift, and so if I can help guys, I feel like God's like, okay, it's your job now to take people and point them in the direction of what's next for their life. And I had to come to the realization that if that's all my purpose is, that's enough, and I do have moments of just, I'm overwhelmed with gratitude. I didn't feel that way in certain points of my life, and that's for sure. I was not grateful. I was the victim, and I was blaming everybody else,
Very common for us to do, very common story. Yeah. And we all have to go on that journey and finding that point where you start taking responsibility for what's going on in your life.
Yep, 100%. And sometimes guys never get there, and it's sad. I don't know if you're familiar with Carl Jung or the Joseph Campbell Hero's Journey.
It sounds familiar.
Yeah, look it up on YouTube. There's a good, but it's this concept that, so Carl Jung was a depth psychologist. He was like on the other side of Freud. Yeah. And he did stories. It was all about like, this culture had this story. This culture had this story. They never met each other, but the moral through lines were the same. And there was these characters, right? These archetypes, he called it. And this is how it got explained to me at Save Warriors. Like, this is your hero's journey, and it's about these stages of, refusing the call, answering the call, going on the journey, right? Going to the abyss, the dark night of the soul, and coming back with the elixir or the wisdom to then help the next person. And so Joseph Campbell took that concept. And if you look at, once we unpacked a few films and we took that and, Star Wars is the perfect hero's journey. And Campbell helped Lucas with that. So I was just talking to the guys about that, and it's cool, like as a first responder in that type A personality, and it speaks, there's something that speaks to your soul. The truth has a certain ring to it. And when I can take someone's recovery and paint that picture for them, they're like, yeah, man, it's a hero's journey. I'm like, it absolutely is. But you can't get caught in the abyss. You can't keep refusing the call. This is where guys get stuck, refusing the call. And sometimes, especially for us, we got to be in a lot of pain, man. Pain is a good teacher. I've heard that before. That's not mine.
But you're adopting it well.
So totally. Pain's a part of life. Suffering is optional. You want to suffer or you want to get well. And sometimes it means surrendering and taking direction,
What year did you come on the job?
2001.
And I know with many of the men and women that I know that are in the fire service, mm-hmm. You can go to the college and get your certification. Does that mean then you don't have to go to a fire academy when you start, or do you still have to go back to a fire academy?
That's a great question. And the things are changing, which is interesting because my 19-year-old, or he's 20 now, he just turned 20. He's wants to be a firefighter. So we're going through all this stuff, and it's changed. So back in the day, you would have to go through the college and get the certification, because a lot of departments wouldn't hire you without it. And then they would put you through more of an advanced,
got it.
I went through a 2-week academy in Anaheim where we're like, we expect you to know all the basics. Now we're going to teach you how we do it in Anaheim, kind of thing. But if you got hired with the larger departments like LA City or LA County Fire, Long Beach, I think there was a few that said high school diploma, 18 years old, high school diploma. And
we'll teach you everything.
We'll teach you everything you need to know in 16 weeks or 26 weeks or whatever. And so, you just, back then you applied for those departments because everybody was, right? Or you just kept working towards getting that cert, which is what I did, but now I guess there's a test you can take online. It's a standardized test. You take that and then you go do a physical agility somewhere and you get that. So you get a grade for that and you get your CPAT, and then these departments just pick off that list. And
so it's a centralized pool that they can pull from.
Yeah. And I think it's cost a lot of money for departments to put on these tests, especially like the written. So it's just, I think they just call them in for interviews now. So that's the new way of doing it. But yeah, that's how I did it. And I had to take a second out on that little condo that I had. And like I said, a lot of guys are still living at home with mom and dad. And I was running up my credit cards, to buy all my uniforms and everything. I didn't have a lot of help, and I took a second out so that I could go squirt water with no guarantee to get a job.
Was there ever a point where you questioned the path you were on, and did you consider like, all right, I'm a garbage ton of money into this, but this just isn't going to happen?
No. No. Yeah. And I got lucky, man. I like I said, I took tests all over. And so I went to work for an ambulance company because I always wanted to be a medic. That was a goal. And so I went back to school. I was going to finish my degree. And then when I got that, I was going to go apply for paramedic school. And that was the progression. Back then you kind of had to, like, if you had a paramedic license, you were golden, and your cert for the firefighter one. So I got picked up in Anaheim as just a regular little firefighter, and I got lucky, and I was able to, but I worked on an ambulance for 8 months before that. And I only had to do the hospital transfers that's not what they talk about in the books, but when you start working for those companies, that's what you end up doing, and so I only had to do that for a couple months, and then I got put on a fire car in Buena Park, where I was running calls. And as a matter of fact, Jeff Adams was one of my mentors during that time. He was a fire captain for OCFA. And we, even though we were stationed at a hotel, we would go to the station to hang out, and they would let us, tie knots and look at the tools, and we would cook dinner for them. And so they kind of brought us into their crew, on that was the B shift. And Jeff's still a friend of mine today. I look up, he's retired now, but I think he got up to division chief, and great guy, and, but yeah, I got hired when I was 22 25 when I finally got hired. But yeah, at no time I was just like, and I got lucky. I got picked up, so the 8 months on an ambulance really isn't, actually back then is not that long. We had guys that were like 2, 3, 4, 5 years in, still taking tests and not getting anywhere, and I was on a couple lists, I'd made it to a couple lists. And so, yeah, I got lucky, and I, working for a city in Orange County that was on my top 5, it was a big deal. I remember in the academy, the Anaheim guys taught ladders, and ladders is the hardest cadre. And these guys came in. I remember after we were done with EMT, and came in like sharks, man. They were just busting in. Dave Baker, one of my buddies and mentors, and they had this belt buckle, it said Anaheim FD on it. I remember seeing their butt, because your head's down, I remember seeing this belt buckle and thinking, man, I want that, and I worked my butt off, and I got picked up there, and I got to work there, and it had its challenges, but it was a great experience. It was a great department to work for. It had everything, it was small enough, but big enough. And you had the west end of town, which is the side of town Disney doesn't put in the brochures, if you know what I mean. And then, which I spent most of the beginning of my career there, right? And the busy houses, running busy calls, and then, you have the resort area, which is like you're in a different world. And then you have all the freeways that run through. You have all the venues to work overtime at, and then Anaheim Hills, which is like, they try to separate themselves, but it's still Anaheim, but it's a little different clientele up there. And you have the wildland interface.
It's West Corona.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Fires blow through there all the same. So, I ended my career as one of the Disney medics, which was kind of fun. It was really fun. I actually saved my career because all they do is the Disney pays the city to have 4 paramedics respond into the resort area. And so, I wasn't going into people's houses or cutting people out of cars and doing all that stuff until the very end when Disney closed down during COVID. And that's when my symptoms kicked up again, and I ended up back in treatment. And that's where I decided, hey, man, this job is taking more from me than it's giving me. And I know you asked me when I started, but I made it all the way to the end somehow.
I was good. So my follow-up question though is for you, when did the symptoms, the head noise, something wasn't right? How soon into the job were you experiencing that?
Well, I think the novelty of the job wore off pretty quickly, but when you're young and you're a hard charger and like, I just think, I had bad coping skills. So I fell into the trap of the boys' trips and the infidelity and all that, so I would say the voices were loud then, but I knew how to quiet them down. Right. I got caught up in all that stuff and it cost me, a marriage and, custody of my kids for a little while. And it was horrible. And I think during that divorce was when the voices got really loud, and I mean, there was a moment there where I was like, okay, I know that I'm abusing alcohol. I'm going through this divorce. I got to do something. So I started going to the gym, like alcoholically, because we all work out. We're all
substitute one addiction for another.
Totally did, and I was able to, kind of get through the divorce, during that time, just going to the gym. And, but I was like, I was in the gym all day long. It was stupid. I was like 9% body fat, like 225, like just, if I didn't get as hungry as I did, I would never probably have left the gym. I'd been there all day. But that's when ideation, I started having ideation and the back injury was looming during that time. You know what I mean? I knew something was going on, but I'd go to the city doc, he'd give me a cortisone shot and send me back to work. And I would just. Was
it a single event injury or a deterioration injury?
Yeah, it was, it showed up one day on the job when I went to go put my gear on the rig and I was to my knees. That's the day it showed up, but it was something that like a lot of us, it was nagging for a while, and I just ibuprofen and go push through it. And then that incident, they took me to the ER, but they just did some, they do an X-ray, which doesn't show anything. And so that was looming. And then when it really all came to a head, the divorce was all finalized, through court hearings that I couldn't afford, trying to represent myself, like it just bad. And, all the forced hires happening, like, and then trying to deal with an ex saying, hey, you're supposed to have the kids on this day. I don't care if the chief said you can't go home. And I'm like, I'm going to drop them off at the station. Like, what do you, it's like, and she's not rational at the time. And neither was I, looking back, we have a great relationship to this day. I mean, back then, not so much, but we get along better now than we did when we were married. So I commend her. She's great. She showed up for the boys when I couldn't, and I commend her for that. And she'll always be the mother of my sons. And I love her in a different way. And she's she's a nurse practitioner now, and she's doing great, and I'm really proud of her. But that was a tough time, you know, and so after of trying to push through the back injury, and it was killing me, and I started separating myself from the guys at the station. Like, they're like, come work out, dude. You don't, you know, I was like playing video games all day. I'm like, it was all I could do just to like get up and down on the rig and run calls. And I remember, like, you talk about like the chemical dumps we have when we're on the job, like cortisol, adrenaline, melatonin, all those things. Like, it would hurt when I was on shift, but when I got home, I couldn't get out of bed because I'd have that, because those chemicals were essentially keeping me upright, you know? And so, going through all the divorce stuff, and having to pay this astronomical amount of money, I didn't want to go off work and do light duty. I had to work overtime. I was getting forced to do it anyways. And, I couldn't get out of bed for a call. It's not a hero way to go out. You know what I mean? And, they took me to UCI, and I begged the doctor, because I knew her, to, do an MRI. I'm like, they're lagging on the MRI. Can you just do it? Something's going on. I feel like I'm going crazy. And they, you know, I had sent one of my discs so far down in my spinal column, it was like causing nerve damage. I had drop foot. It was bad. So, you know, they sent me home, and I laid in bed in pain, waiting for a surgery, you know, and like I said, I wasn't, that's when the hypervigilance, like, you know, ideation started, because I could not shut my head off. And now I'm injured. I'm laid up, you know, I'm renting a room from a buddy in Laguna Beach. I'm never seeing my kids, and all I have time to do is lay there and think, you know, and it's existential crisis. Like, how am I going to be able to make it back to work? You know, and the doctor's like, you know, they don't talk, you know, we throw surgery around in our professions like it's no big deal, but it's a big deal when you're sitting in front of a doctor, and he's like, well, you know, there's a 2% chance you'll never walk again. There's a 5% chance you'll never get an erection again. You know, it's like, and I don't have the support. I don't know anything about this mental health stuff. I had separated myself from the guys in the department. I pick up the bottle again, you know, and now I have these pain meds. You know, I just thought about, the voices got loud, and I thought, if I can't do this job, I don't even know, you know, you talk about the identity and all that stuff. And I waited a month. I had the surgery, was not prepared.
How old were you at this point?
Gosh, it was in 2015, and I'm 48 years old now. So in my 30s, maybe. Yeah.
You're about a decade removed from it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I went and had the surgery, and, you know, I was just like we do. I thought, okay, if I can get physically healthy and get back to work, I can just get my life somewhat normal again. So I found a trainer, and a great guy, worked for the college, did it for free. I was broke, you know, and I started working out every day. He worked me out, and after, I think, 5 months total, I thought, okay, I think I'm good. I think I can go back to work. And I went back, and after a couple of shifts, I'm like icing my back again. I have drop foot. It's starting to spasm. It freaked me out. So I had to go back off work. And right around that time, I had a court date, didn't go my way. I had to rent a car, ended up getting a DUI after drinking. And because that was my coping skill. You know, I that's what I used to numb out. And CHP pulled me over, and they hooked me up, and they gave me a DUI. And then I tried to go out death by cop later that night. And it was bad. And you know, things got worse before they got better, but those men saved my life that night. And I've tried to reach out to them to thank them, but CHP, they think it's weird that it's someone that they arrested wants to reach out to them. But that's okay. Because what happened was I ended up going to a clinician who's culturally competent, who's still a dear friend of mine to this day. She only saw me 2 times back then, and said, hey, there's this combat veteran first responder suicide prevention program. They take first responders. It's in Malibu. It's free. You might want to check it out. And that changed my life forever. You know, and like I said, it got worse before it got better, but these guys took me in, and they came back for me, and they taught me a lot about myself that I never learned through initiation, through good mentors, through a father, these guys, they taught me, Matty, men do things because the little boys won't do, because it's the right thing to do, period. I was like, whoa.
I don't want to overgeneralize this, but to go to that level of a depth of depression, alcoholism, and then to reach out or at least be open to someone saying, hey, here's some place where you can go get help. That's a big jump.
Yeah.
How do you get there? I mean, that didn't happen.
No.
Am I surmising correctly? That didn't happen overnight.
No. And like I said, and I always say this before I talk about this part, but the city of Anaheim did the best they could with what they had at the time. Do I feel like they could do better now? Yes, with everything we know, and that's one thing. But when I was struggling and guys knew, we didn't have a peer support team. We had a CISM team, you know what I mean? We didn't have resources, and so there was one time where I was physically shaking. I couldn't go into work. And I parked outside the station. I'm like, I can't show up for work today, dude. I'm like coming out of my skin. So I called the station. I'm like, my buddy, I said, hey, what's that phone number, dude, for a counselor, man? Like, I can't come into work today. And he's like, who is this? I'm like, it's Matty, dude. He's like, hold on, and he had to go find the number. And it was an EAP that the city sent everybody to.
Right.
And I went to this counselor who told me that she diagnosed me with PTSD, and she told me I needed some Xanax and a good lawyer. Right. So that was my first. And then,
was that your very first time ever going and talking to somebody professional?
Yeah. For PTS, my wife and I in the first marriage tried some marriage counseling. And then, so that whole thing happened, and I took her advice. I got give an alcoholic some Xanax. That's smart, So, so that went on for a month maybe. And then one day I'm like sitting in front of my locker, and I'm like, my buddy is our captain. He's a good friend of mine. He's like, I'm like, I can't put that uniform on, man. And he's like, dude, you put your uniform on and you show up for lineup and you fake it for one more day. I said, I've been faking it for a long time, dude. I can't. He's like, oh, all right. So he called the chief, and then they had everybody come out. And then again, they're like, here, call this, figure it out, dude. We're going to give you a couple of days off, figure it out. Right. And I was like, okay. So I called that same EAP, and then I got this lady who's like, you're going to go take a drug test. I'm like, whoa. Like, I have PTS. Like, why? No, these are the keys to you ever working in this city again. Like that. It was like, these are some of the things I'm glad happened. It was crappy, but I'm glad it happened, because if they would have come at me and said, Matt, we know that you're struggling with PTS. We know that there might be alcohol issue. We have a treatment center, that takes first responders, and we're going to write you off work, and we're going to get this covered through work. Like, if they would have taken that, no, I get some lady, I don't even know, say, I hold the keys to you ever working in the city again. And what do you think I did? I went right downstairs. I called my union rep, and I said, this is bullshit. And so again, I got a month off without pay, because I didn't do, and then I found a therapist I went to the back of my insurance card. I found a therapist, and I called, and I said, I'm great. And she wrote me a letter and said, he's good to go back to work. And they were good with that. And that was it. So, that was my experience with asking for help. So it scared me, man. I wanted to die. And if it wasn't for, it makes me emotional every time. If it wasn't for a buddy of mine, the union president, Rick Cheatham, and my buddy Manny Ponce de Leon show up at my house that morning with a card that begged me. He said, dude, we're worried about you, man. We're afraid something bad's going to happen. I said, you should be, because I'm just waiting for the moment. And my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, if it wasn't for them, I probably wouldn't have made that choice that day to take 2 buses. I had no car, lost everything. Took 2 buses with the help of my girlfriend, who's like navigating the buses, and I'm just like wrecked. I'm like, okay, now I have a DUI. Now I'm gonna lose my job. I'm physically messed up. And then that one counselor, like I said, and her name is Dr. Shauna Hill. She's a colleague of mine now. I love her to death. Offering me that Save a Warrior program, I wouldn't be here, but it did. I think I was at that moment in time, I was doing it for my friends. I was doing it for my friends,
You referred to it in I think the perfect words. You were faking it for a long time when your captain buddy called you out.
Yeah.
But in looking back on it, in your mind, did you think you were hiding it well? And when you look back on it, people were actually calling you out and you were just bullshitting them?
Dude, I was not hiring. I thought I was hiding it well. Right. But everybody knew. Everybody knew something was up with Matty. I was showing up to work late, because I would sit on the edge of my bed and look at my watch like, I don't want to go in. I don't want to go in, and then there's the mandatory force hire issue in the fire service right now is a problem. It's a big problem. It was few and far between, like when I first got hired. And then at about 3 years on, it became common practice in the fire service to not hire enough. And I know they'll say we can't keep up with the attrition, but it's bullshit, because there are departments out there that keep the numbers up, and that's a very low thing. And it's a bad thing. So like, I have PTS, I'm going through this divorce. I don't want to go in for one day. And I get there and I'm force hired for 120 hours. So I felt like I was in prison, and that's how I was feeling that day. So, and so that
people who outside the profession who are listening, who don't understand what that basically means, is you show up on Monday at 8 o'clock and you think you're going to work, let's even just say at 24, but they go, you're not going home till Friday.
Right. Yep. And what do you do? What do you, I mean, you're right. And then all this, like the stuff that I was talking about with the guy that came in today, like we have this, you just know that if you can't show up for that shift, someone else is going to have to fill that seat. So you're guilty. Like you're leaving your comrades, like you're messing with your buddies, and I mean, I remember a time where guys were like getting into it behind the station. Like, you think your kid's soccer game's more important than this wedding that I have to go to? Like, you took the day off, you got me for, like,
right.
And it just breaks down camaraderie, and it's just, it's not good. It's not good. And I hope that, I know that with these suicides that they had in LA County Sheriff's Department, those guys are now limited to how much overtime they can work. And that's a good thing. We got to live within our means, and we have to take our time off. We have to, do things that are self-care. Because guys, I mean, I think they just changed the retirement to like 57 now or something like that. I'm sorry, guys aren't going to make it that long. There's no way. There's no way. It's not the fire service of old.
Oh no.
And I mean, yeah.
And the funny thing is, though, is if you think about it, if something similar to that was to happen in the private sector, where all of a sudden, hey, you're not going home, and by the way, you're going to be here for the next 4 days, you would have, I mean, no pun intended, you'd have riots.
Oh, totally. Can you imagine?
But the thing is that it, like you said, though, every one of us comes to the table with that hero mentality, and you're like, man, if I'm not here, I'm not only letting my partners down, I'm letting my community down. I'm letting the people that expect us to be there. So that there's so much pressure
totally
to fulfill that role.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot. And it's in my opinion, it's not fair for the decision makers to essentially take that great attitude and use it against us. It's not fair. It's hurting guys. It's hurting guys in so many different ways.
Well, and on the flip side too, there are many of us who take advantage of it. They abuse it. They work that enormous amount of overtime. They get used to all that cash. They buy all the toys, but then that creates its own problems too.
Absolutely.
It's a weird kind of thing. It's like they create the environment. Those that, I'll say, thrive in it, they don't look at them long term and think, well, shit, when the overtime runs out in a couple of years, what's this guy going to do?
Right.
He's living 7 times beyond his means. Or you get the other ones like, hey, I just want to go home to my family. Nope, you can't.
Right.
You got to be here. There's not a win-win in any factor of it.
Right. Yeah. It's like the fit for duty thing, that's a bad word. The fit for duty is a bad word. It's the F word, right? But I work with a police psychologist, Gina Gallivan, that does fit for duties. And it changed my whole perspective, right? And this is why. And I think this has, we can make some comparisons to what we were just talking about, but you have a person on the job like myself back then who was obviously struggling, right? Now, if you have a clinician that is pro-employee, right, who wants to help this person, just like any injury, get them the right help, get them injury rehabbed, and get them back to work. It's a great tool, Unfortunately, like everything else, right, we've weaponized it in the past. That's happened. Guys weaponize it when they want to get rid of people. But if I have a guy who I am fearful is going to complete suicide, is going down that route, forget the job, right? And I'm telling you, there are guys out there that they're a danger to themselves and the guys on the job. But if we can create an environment and build algorithms into our policies and procedures and get the right help, right? Hopefully we don't have to get to that point. But there's at some point we got to say, hey man, and I've helped guys that were off on fit for duty. I've helped them through treatment. I've helped them through sobriety, and I've watched them go back to work and do great, and they're helping other people, and like I was talking about before. So you take this same kind of idea, like it's going to take some really good leaders who actually give a shit to say, we need to maybe put the word out there. Hey, look, we're going to staff up here. We're going to staff up. Overtime's going to start dwindling a little bit. So, in the next 6 months or a year, we're going to be full staffing level. So, hey, you guys who have all this debt, you might want to, there's a good way to do it, right? You might want to think about offloading some of this stuff or get your ducks in a row or put some money in the bank or whatever, because this is going away. But we're going to staff up. We're going to end this mandatory force hire thing. It's not going to be the way we do business. And like I said, it can be done because I know a couple departments that are doing great and their guys are healthy and they're happy and they're way ahead of the curve when it comes to this stuff. So these are all material solutions to spiritual problems. We know that, right? So we eliminate, that 1% or 2% of the guys that are doing that. And we err on the side of the guy that wants to go home and be with his family. That's the way I look at it, because at the end of the day, like I tell guys, when you hang it up, it's those folks that are going to be waiting for you at home. You hope, right? I had a guy, a fire battalion chief who retired. He had all the toys, man, everything. And he just passed away from alcoholism. And we tried to help him. But he went home, and after the career was done, and it was so sad because he was so wrapped around the axle that he never got a retirement party because of COVID. That really, it cut him so deep. He drank himself to death, man. And family's everything. The people waiting when we're, that's the most important thing. Your days off, taking the time to be the best husband and father or wife and mother that you can be, because they're going to be waiting for you when you hang it up.
I use this analogy often in that when I talk about those in our community, both veteran and the first responder, where they live this life 24/7, 365 days a year. And the analogy that I often use, I go, when you find a plumber when they're off duty, the last thing they want to talk about is a clogged toilet.
Right.
They aren't walking around with a monkey wrench.
Right.
They don't want to do anything plumbing related.
Right.
You take one of us and it's like, we're never off.
Right. Yeah.
And it's not cliche. The day you walk out that door for the last time, if you think you're going to be remembered by everybody, no.
Right.
It's human nature. Life is going to happen.
Right.
They're going to move on. You're going to move on.
Yep.
And if that's all you have,
yeah,
you can't do that.
Yeah.
Just make it a job. It's something you do.
Yeah. It's a season. And you can be good at it and still be good at home.
Yeah.
You know, there's a good balance there. You know, it's just, I think, like I said, the leaders we have to make some decisions that, you know, are for our people, you know, not the machine. The sausage is going through it, not the machine.
Yeah.
You know, how many times I give one a great example. Oh, we're going to put this rig over here because we got to prove to the city that the call volume is this and that, and that we're doing this. I'm like, I was here 22 years. We put in one new station and we took a rig from another station to put it there. So we're not proving to anybody the numbers of, you know, we ran 65,000 calls or something. The call volume is way up than it was. And we, you know, so let's kind of table that for now. Maybe we don't need the new rig, you know, maybe we need some staffing. Maybe we need some more mental health resources for these guys. Maybe we need to put, you know, some more, you know, neurofeedback, biofeedback. Maybe we need to start investing in some of this stuff that we can put into the stations, you know, and we're getting better at it. Like I said, there's massage chairs and that stuff all, you know, taking a couple minutes, you know, I was talking to a police chief who they have like a room, you know, my buddy in Garland, Texas, they have a whole meditation room with massage chairs and they can go in there before or after their shift. And there's a lot, that's the longevity of your career, going in there before and going after and taking 20, 25 minutes to just calm your nervous system down. In the long run, it's going to help. So let's start investing in stuff like that. Let's start investing in our people, and that's going to trickle down to the way we behave in the community and the way we approach our jobs. And you know, because when it's not all tough guy, and because I remember those nights. Yeah, I've been here 6 days, and I haven't got, you know, I got 10 calls after midnight, but I want to go out on that strike team. You know, I want to go out on that. It's like that's fun for a little while, and it's a season, but. You know, the guy that's been on for 15, 20 years, he doesn't care about that stuff anymore. He just wants to get through the shift and go home.
Let's not get a call for service for the rest of the shift.
Yeah.
You said something though that I think is even more equal. I'll say equally important. Mm-hmm. Where you wrote out on a call and your partner went, "Man, I hate these calls." Mm-hmm. Something as simple as that from the day one of our career when it starts. You know, I use the analogy, a new police officer in the car with a training officer, and you get some kid, I'll say kid, 23, 24 years old, whatever. They go into a child abuse investigation, and they just get to see what the worst of humanity can do to another human being. And what do? Hey, you ready to clear? We got another call. No, go out to the car and go, how did that make you feel?
Right.
And if the trainee says, "Man, that scrambled my eggs," no stress. Go back to the station, call it a day, but start teaching them that it's okay to admit that stuff bothers them.
Right. And
let's figure out a way to help them address it from day one.
Right. You know what a lot of these guys are just looking for, man? I know I was, and I didn't get it until I talked to Brian Haggerty, LAPD officer, Army veteran on the phone from Save a Warrior. Validation. To hear him say, "Matty, you know, everything you're going through is completely normal. For a human being that's experienced trauma, it's normal. All that stuff I went through, I never had one person validate. And that's validation. Hey man, that stuff sucks, dude. That sucks bad. And if you think it sucks and it's, like you said, if it's messing with you, dude, it's normal and it's okay to say,
yes,
I need a break from that or whatever. You know, we have a guy right now, he's a cop and he's in child sex crimes right now. And he has to look at that. And I've heard story after story. I mean, how long do we keep those people in those positions? Like, do we beef up their, do we get a therapist and normalize like them off-gassing this stuff? I mean, someone's got to look at it to do their job. I get it, man. That's right. But how are we supporting those people that are having to look at that stuff? I don't want to see that stuff.
Well, I got to lead one of those teams near the tail end of my career when I was a commander. And one of the things that I experienced a little bit of when I was doing computer forensics for the FBI is the FBI really implemented, and it's probably going on a decade now, where when you're in those realm and you're dealing especially with child sexual abuse material, mandated, I think it's twice a year, you have to go talk to a psychologist.
Good.
But yeah, leaving somebody in these positions for 10, 15 years, no. There's no way to normalize looking at that for the next 15 years of your life.
No way. I actually had one of the peer support teams in LA County that we service. I had a young guy who's been in that bureau for a while say, hey, we have a couple new guys coming in. Do you think you can do a little training for us before these guys come in? I'm like, that's the stuff right there, bro. I love your thinking. Yes. To at least set them up for, what the signs and symptoms are for when you start struggling, where you could say, hey, I need a timeout and make everybody aware. That's like, this is the education that we need to give the guys, not just, and I know I've talked to the folks that say, I watch it because I'm going to catch that guy and he's never going to do it again. Right. And I get that, but that only gets you so far, man.
Going back to you said you got to a point where you basically made them think that everything was good to go. You had talked, and you were assigned to Disneyland. That period when you came back and you were working at Disneyland, were you still not okay?
No, I wasn't okay, but I think that was a fun assignment. Like no one wants that assignment. It's not the cool, like, pipe hitting thing to do on the fire department. Like you're running calls into Disneyland. They're mostly medical aids. You're getting a nurse to tell you what's up. You have to put on a show a little bit because there's a ton of cameras. You got to know what to do on stage, what to do off stage. And you get it's pretty mundane. You get the same people that forget their asthma, medicated diabetics that, people go to heat stroke, every once in a while we got something gnarly, but you have a ton of help. You know what I mean? So I think that it prolonged my career.
But for you, it worked.
It worked because I could, I was hanging out with the APD guys. I got really close to a bunch of guys. Unfortunately, one completed suicide, very close, one of my angels. And one of the reasons why I talk about this stuff today is because of Derek. And it was fun, man. We walked up to the House of Blues together. We watched shows. We knew everybody at the House of Blues, all their security people, like the Disney security people that we had like this little family, and it was fun, it was super fun. And so, like I said, and the Chiefs never came over there. Like they were just like, just don't miss a call, make us look good.
Don't get me a call.
Don't get me in trouble. I don't want to come in there. And it was, it was fun. It was fun. So that, in my moments of struggle, I think that time in my career, I was doing well, because it was fun.
And so when COVID hit, basically they shut that down. You had to go back to a regular firehouse.
Oh, it was worse than that. They said, okay, the Disney medics aren't doing anything, so we're going to make them the low-level COVID rig for the whole city. So my partner, and this is before we knew what it was.
Because they were thinking it was just going to be temporary and then you'll go back to being the Disneyland crew.
Right. So we're in Tyvex. I went from struggling on a rig, on a big fire engine, 4 people, an ambulance crew, 2 guys showing up, code 3, lights and sirens, blah, blah, blah. We're here, this whole team, to 2 guys, me and my partner, driving into West Anaheim for anything that was fever or flu-like symptoms. We went in Tyvex with the masks on, you know what I mean? In the ghetto going, oh, did you lock the rig, dude? We never, engineer locked the rig, maybe. Like we just didn't. It's like, this isn't Disney, bro. We're not behind the gates anymore. There's not security managers watching the rig. Like it was like, so my symptoms came back like tenfold. And at that time, I was shepherding the Save a Warrior. I helped build a treatment center for first responders. I was speaking all over the country. I was doing business development. I was burning my own days off to and I was getting phone calls from guys to get them help, and I loved it. But man, I could not. I was very pro meditation, everything holistic, organic. Like I was very resistant from any kind of medication because I had tried before. It just but I couldn't get in front of my symptoms, man, and I relapsed.
And what's strange for me is, so you were already deep into the training pipeline on how to identify it, address it, and you still couldn't pull yourself out of it?
And that, my friend, led me to my most significant suicide attempt, because I couldn't take my own advice. So I was shaming myself bad, you know? And I went to my business partners and they sent me to a treatment center, and it was humbling, man, because I helped start one, you know, and now I'm in one myself. I didn't want to go to any first responder treatment center. I went to a 6-bed treatment center to get my my alcoholism under control, and it was during that time where, you know, I made the decision, this job is taking more from me than it's giving me, because I had a panic attack prior to that at work, and I hadn't had panic attacks for a long time. So I did 30 days in inpatient treatment. I got out. I was doing outpatient therapy online, going in 1 day a week, and I got overwhelmed one day, and I pulled my gun out of the safe, and my wife intervened. And if she wasn't there to physically intervene, I wouldn't be here. And I, you know, I tell people, because I work with a lot of people that are suicidal in that space, you know, and the guys that have like shoulda, coulda, wouldas, you know, and I'm here to tell people, like, when someone's in that trance, unless you're there to physically intervene, there's nothing you can do. So you can, but that's, you know, knowing that, it's like, I can't go there in my own mind, which is kind of helps a little bit, man. Maybe if I could have done this or could have done that. But the truth is, like, when you're in that trance, you just, you know, and I was lucky enough to have my wife intervene, but it traumatized her. And it was, you know, there's a documentary filmmaker followed me around for 3.5 years. And that's actually documented in this documentary. It's called PTSD 911. It's on Amazon Prime. But I remember that day, I didn't want to take any of the medications. I was like, because PTSD, right? It's physiological as well. So I didn't want to drink so bad that day, but I didn't know what else to do. And a lot of it is a blur. But I ended up in a psych ward after that. I voluntarily went to a psych ward where I decided I can't feel this way, and I can't use the old coping skills. So they put me on 6 medications, which I was like really against for a long time, because that's what they do. You know, this was the psych patients we run on. And so, and it took me a while to get adjusted. I went back to treatment for 45 days to get adjusted to the medications. And then I got out, and I locked myself in my apartment for 3 months. I wouldn't leave. I was going through the medical retirement thing, which the city stopped paying me. So all the financial stuff that came along with that. But, you know, I had a friend who called. She works for the Amen clinics, and Dr. Amen and their foundation paid for me to have SPECT scans done, which gave me that glimmer of hope, you know. And then I physically saw, they did a biopsychosocial on me. I physically saw what my brain looked like, and that I had TBI, which I didn't, in the part of my brain, that the prefrontal cortex, which gave me, it was like, okay, those are some reasons for my behaviors. And so I slowly, I was working with a therapist that I still work with today. I was working through the shame. I'd disconnected myself from everybody but my men, you know? And I just slowly wanted to get well, and I wanted to transition out of the job. I didn't know if I'd ever be back in the mental health space again. And a day at a time, you know, I got back into the rooms of recovery. I worked heavily on the, my sobriety and working the steps. I got a new sponsor and a really good man. And then there was this offer to do the stellar ganglion block. Have you heard of that treatment?
Is that the shot in the neck?
Yeah. Yeah. Game changer. And I heard about it years before. I'm like, why would you ever want to stick a needle in your neck? Like, that's insane. Dude, I would have done anything to feel better. So their foundation paid for me and my wife to fly to Chicago and have this done. And a couple things happened. One, I'd never felt that comfortable in my body in my whole entire life. Like, I walked into the job with that bag of crap from my childhood. So my nervous system was on fire from the time I was little. Colors were brighter. Like, and we're in the city of Chicago. I'm coming out of my skin. That the first night, like literally like looking for an AA meeting, like trying to like feel comfortable, like, and got up that morning, had it done. I had him put me out. I woke up in tears, like wailing, like grief and gratitude. Like I don't know how to else explain it. Like I went out into the city, my wife and I taking buses, trains. I have my service dog with me, so he's a big black lab. So shifty people wanted nothing to do with us, but I was like, I felt like myself again. Like I was talking to people and, you know, like exploring the city of Chicago, and like, it was like, I had the greatest 5.5 days. And my wife and I were struggling a little bit with our marriage. Well, we went on birth control for 10 years and we conceived in Chicago. So I have a 16-month-old little girl. Her name's Jordan. She got conceived in Chicago. She was born in the year 2023. And she was almost born on Michael Jordan's birthday. We're huge Michael Jordan fans. So, so I have a little daughter now, you know, that's a result of that nervous system. It settled her nervous system down enough to conceive, you know, and someone needs to hear that. I like to share that part of the story because I called the folks at Stella and I said, you might want to put this in your studies. So Jordan is like officially like the first Stella baby. So, and it makes sense. You know, the doctors are like, oh, okay. Like we're going to write this in a medical journal. Like, you know, people that are under stress, right? Their bodies, you hear the stories of people under stress trying to get pregnant, pay all that money, and then they adopt, and then 2 months later they get pregnant. Mm-hmm. It's kind of that thing. So,
now, yeah, you need that shot again.
So that's a great question. Some people do,
because that's where I was going with it. So I've had another guest who's tried it. It was eerily weird the way you were describing it, the way he described it, the tears, this almost a level of euphoria, but at the same token, a level of peace that he goes, I had never felt that before.
Yep.
Like literally the voices were quiet.
Yes.
But he said, unfortunately for him, it wore off rather quickly.
Yeah. It's an in addition to, so I got right back into my recovery. Like I couldn't go to 12-step meetings because I was falling apart during the meetings, you know? So this settled my nervous system down enough to go, okay. I was like, EMDR, let's get back in the rooms. Let's start working on, you know, let's start working the steps again. Let's get to these character defects. Let's off gas some of this inventory. Let's make my amends. You know what I mean? Like I was all in for all the stuff that I was doing. And since then I haven't had to go back for it. You know, my daily practice is very important, you know, and without fail, like every day I roll out of bed, I read my devotional, I hit my knees, I pray, I meditate, I drive to a 12-step meeting. You know, those are how my day starts. You know, and when I'm out of town, I find a 12-step meeting out of town. And when I do that, you know, and then I do therapy, like on the way home, I'm gonna call my therapist and we'll have a chit chat. She's a spiritual advisor now. I don't call her my therapist because she's an amazing woman. She, after I left treatment, said, I want to see you for free. And I couldn't afford therapy. And so we became friends after that. And she's like, do you want me to keep notes? I'm like, no. She's like, okay, I'm your spiritual advisor. She's blind. Yeah. How cool is that?
Probably sees inside you though better than anybody.
I've never been as open and honest with a person than I have with her. And you know, I'm special. I need a special therapist, but she's great. So yeah, I got, you know, I just went all in, and slowly, like I had Dr. Gallivan show up at my house. Like, Matty, you're too important to this community. Like I've seen you save people's lives. Like we need you, you know, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to get back and all that. Like, you know, and I prayed about it. And then she's like, just, you could do as much as you want, not do, you know, and then Gabe Lira, he's a retired Hawthorne police department sergeant who builds peer support teams. He's my partner on the police side, and we have a little family, you know, and healed a lot of wounds because when I was doing a lot of things for a lot of people, and when I relapsed, I felt like I got like tossed, you know, and that hurt. And
well, you said an important thing is that you were trying to hide the shame.
Right.
There's a lot of shame in feeling that you failed.
Right.
Especially, I mean, you want to talk about compounding for you. You're working with others, helping them.
Right.
And now you can't even help yourself.
Right.
There had to be a huge amount of perceived shame.
Absolutely. It was all perceived, because when I started to come out of it and I took these steps to get well, I had these people like Gina and Gabe say, man, we love you and we know what you're capable of. And let's, and the guy who, Conrad Weaver, who was the producer and the director of this film, I called him and I'm like, dude, I got something to tell you. And he's like, what's up? I'm like, I relapsed. I'm going back to treatment. And he's like, dude, I thought you were going to say you didn't want to be in the film anymore. I've been following you. I'm like, no. He's like, dude, it's part of your story. Like, so there were a couple people that really never gave up on me. And those are the people that when I decided to go back out and start putting myself out there again, because it is my purpose, I learned a lot from the situations, boundaries, and, when to shut my phone off and somebody else can take the call. And I know that now, I know what my daily practice, my recovery, my family, and then,
I could also see, as we talked about, you've probably got a natural addictive personality.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
And so I could see you going, well, I'm here to help. I'm going to be here 24/7 to help everybody else, and completely letting yourself go or your family go.
Right. And that's what happened. So again, taking perspective, right? Learning from all those situations, knowing, who to do business with. I'm not a business guy, but, I just started a nonprofit and I built a board, and I'm very, very selective about who is going to be working with me, because it's about the people and the intention, right? I told you my intention is always to minimize the effects of this mental health issue and this suicide epidemic. And so I want the people with those intentions. It's not about money. I'm really put off because there's a lot of people out there right now that are making money off of our brothers and sisters suffering. And it makes me sick to my stomach, and they're not doing a good job. And so again, perspective, I know who those people are. I don't want to be like them. I learned really quick that, the good people rise to the top, and those are the people that I surround myself with today. And like I said, I learned boundaries, and I learned, what's most important, and it's God, my recovery, my family, my purpose, and just building a good team of people enough to say, okay, I'm comfortable with this guy. You can handle it, and that's what we need to do out there. That we need to train our people how to take care of their buddies,
I think, unfortunately, you bring up a very important point, though, is that whatever the cause is, and they're my wife and I are heavily involved in the breast cancer research walks, but unfortunately, there's ways that entities come into those organizations, and like you said, their desire is not for what's best for that cause,
right?
And unfortunately, you or I step in for help or assistance from that person or that cause that maybe doesn't have the best intentions. It's going to leave a really black mark on us, and it's going to take a lot to overcome that and try the next one.
Right. Oh, absolutely. And that's scary, because for us, for our culture, you got one shot with some of these guys.
That's exactly it.
If they walk in and they see, because we have really good bullshit meters, right? If they walk in and they see this is a racket, this person doesn't, you know what I mean? Then that might be your only chance. That's why it's really important. You're right. And I'm glad I got to see behind the curtain. So I know the questions to ask. I get treatment centers call me once every couple of weeks. Hey, we want to start a first responder program. We saw you on and I'm like, yeah, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, why first responders? Oh, you guys are great people. We want to, but I've seen behind the curtain, and I know, so, yeah, I've got some ideas about, vetting some of these places, because wellness coordinators are working their own shifts, right? They're lucky if they're on a 40-hour work week. They have their families, they have their stuff, and they're getting inundated with these, resources, and having to vet these places. And so I want to be of assistance to those folks, so they can say, like, have you been vetted by Matty's nonprofit, the First Responder Peace and Refuge Foundation? Oh yeah. Okay. Well, then we'll start there. And so they can they're busy, and they don't need to be going out to all these places constantly or taking these phone calls when they're up to their ears and helping their own people, so that's part of it. But like I said, I know that I've learned the pinch points. I see where there's gaps, and we want to stand in the gap with those guys and help them, physically and financially. So where God leads, God provides. So we'll see.
When you were coming out of your, I'll call it the relapse or your second iteration,
mm-hmm.
I can imagine when you step back and you say, I was working with these guys before, but I failed myself, that almost be a hesitancy of wanting to get back into that. But it sounds like you knew, hey, when I come out of this, yeah, I'm going to walk away from the fire service, but that's my passion. That's my calling. Or was it something where you had to convince yourself to go back to it?
I think I wasn't going to go back to it. And there was some convincing myself, but I said Gabe and Gina, and when the film came out and Conrad, and then the board, there's a big conference in San Diego called the PSPSA conference. And the board down there, they're Dave Piccone, he's a chief down in San Diego, is a really good friend of mine. They're like, you're going to be on the committee, Matty. These are your people. And I was like, no, I don't think I'm ready for that. They're like, no, you're going to be on the committee. So they gave me a committee spot, and it was just it was the people that believed in me and stuck by me, that gave me the confidence again.
The validation.
Yep. Give me the validation. They helped build my confidence by making me do things like that. And now I've done, this will be the third year coming up, and I love that conference. And from there, it just it happened organically again, and people showed me nothing but love. I know there's probably some haters out there. I don't worry about those folks. You know what I mean? But mostly I got was, Matty, we knew you fell off. We're glad you're back, and that, I don't even get into those conversations anymore, because now it's been a couple years now. So
that's cool that they saw it as just a hiccup. Like, you got kicked off the horse, get right back on. We know you can ride. Totally.
And I feel, in my own recovery, it's solid now. It's absolutely solid. So they say, relapse is part of the disease. I don't plan on relapsing again, but I have a lot of things in between me and a drink, a lot of things. And one huge in particular is that my 16-month-old daughter has never seen me drunk or isolated or rage, none of that stuff. And that's when I look at that little girl, it's when I don't feel like getting up and doing the daily practice, I look at that little girl and I go, no, not today. Get up. Because her ACEs score right now is a 0, bro. We're going to keep it that way. That's my wife and I's joke. Because I'm a 9, she's a 10.
For you, what's your take on the growth of the use of the, why am I drawing a blank on it now? Psychedelics and the treatment for trauma and PTS?
Yeah, so I'm in recovery. So I know a lot of people that have used it, and I say,
was it ever an option for you?
It's always been an option. Yeah, I've had people offer ketamine treatment and psilocybin, and for me, I experimented with some of that stuff when I was young.
Got it.
So I know what it feels like to be detached from your consciousness, if you will. I'm afraid, and there's a lot of, this is just me, because I know there's a lot of evidence-based white paper stuff written that it actually helps with addiction, but there's just something in me that feels like it might kick off a craving.
Got it.
And I don't want to crave the feeling, because I'm so past that stuff. I don't crave drugs and alcohol anymore. But I've talked to a lot of people. I have a couple friends. One that do Cambo. It's like the frog thing, and they do it in sacred space, and they're trained on how to do it, and they're helping a lot of people, overcome certain things. So for me, I think it's great if it, I'm not against it. I think if I've been in that space, if you're in that space and you are looking for something to help break out of that, that place that you're in, and that's available and it's done, in the right way. I think it's super valuable. So I'm definitely not against it. It's not off the table for me. I think, I'm doing pretty well. Like I said, I don't, when I call my therapist, it's not like, okay, we're going to do EMDR today around this. It's like, we talk about what's going on, and if something comes up, like I've had a few things come up. I go, okay, this has come up. It's come to my awareness and I want to do something about it. And then we do some work around it. It's not like we go digging stuff up. So, I know that I have a few blocks with like worthiness and that kind of get in the way of, and I procrastinate with some things. And so far, just talking that stuff out with my therapist has been effective. So, there's a combat veteran. His name is Jonathan Chia, and he built this thing called the Reality Center in Santa Monica. And it's a ketamine treatment without the ketamine.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I've done that a couple of times, and we're going to partner with him. We do wellness boot camps with Dr. Gina Gallivan. So we do a workout. Santa Monica, half the group does a workout, half the group does this reality center, and then we go to a place called Pause and do a sound bath, and guys love it. So it's just a way to naturally separate your consciousness from your body. And so I would say for people that try stuff like that, I would start maybe trying something like that before you go full blown. But I think if it helps, and there's a lot of research that says that it's rewiring people's brains, and then I'm all for it, man. If it's done in the right way with the right doctors. And
that's where my stance is on it, is that if people are seeing a benefit from it, then why not continue to explore it, but at least start making it a little bit more readily accessible to the people who want to try that.
I agree.
Because I think you brought up a great point where you've now created a routine for you every morning and what you go through. And really, when you think about it, that's daily life. Mm-hmm. If you want to be physically fit, you can't go to the gym once a week and say, I'm going to be in shape.
Right.
It's got to be a commitment on a regular basis. You have to create a routine, what you're eating, what you're working at, all that. It's the same thing. When you're coming out of trauma and to come out or to start that new journey, it's about creating that routine. And that routine, I think, is what drives you forward.
Right.
And for somebody who might be sitting on the fence right now, and they've heard their buddies say, hey, man, I tried this, psychedelic therapy. I think if that's their first step off, make it easy for them to give it a try. Because if it's working for them, let them do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And there's some really good people out there doing some really good work with those kind of modalities. And make it accessible. Don't demonize it. We're past that. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know, especially law enforcement. Like, I know a lot of firefighters that have done even ayahuasca and all that, like, and have great benefits from it. It's a little bit more, discouraged in law enforcement, which is sad, because those guys, it's like, you'll go drinking with a guy who has an alcohol problem,
right?
But you won't let him under a doctor's care go do, whatever. But whatever. These are some of the changes to the culture that we have to.
Now, my flip side question. So I asked you if coming out of the second iteration, you were hesitant about getting back into helping people. Mm-hmm. Now that you've stepped away from the fire life, does it help you staying connected by still being in the space where you're helping first responders and veterans?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I tell guys when I go speak, I got the best job in the world. I'm like, I get to hang out with you guys all over the country, get to know you, have the phone calls, have the relationships, but I don't have to run the calls and I don't have to get up at night. So absolutely. It keeps me connected. And I was in the whole world of the Anaheim Fire Department. These are my guys. Like, I never really ventured. I knew some guys from this department or some guys for that department, but I had this like gang mentality and now, like, I've been all across the country and I've met first responders from all over, and I have relationships with first responders from all over, and I get to stay connected, and it absolutely heals me, because I wasn't ready to go, I was ready to go, but it wasn't the allotted, time in my expectations.
How many years total did you make?
22. Yeah. So, I didn't make it to 30. I was talking to, who was I talking to today? I don't know. It's just amazing when guys, especially in the fire service, make it over 30 years.
It's a long ass time, man.
Oh, man.
I did 35. I basically did my entire adult life in the law enforcement field. And sometimes I wonder, I'm like, what else could I have done?
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah. I feel like we're doing it now, right? Yeah. We got half our life left to go make a difference.
Hey, for me, this podcast is that little piece that keeps me connected. Because like I've said, the people that I was working with 7 months ago, 3/4 of them, I don't talk to them on a regular at all.
Right.
There's only a select few, and even those select few, it's not constant. It's not consistent. Right. We're out of sight, out of mind. Yeah. It's human nature.
Yeah.
So when you walk away from this, from whatever it is, veteran, first responder, you got to have something else.
Oh man. I can't, I can't say that enough, especially the guys even the young guys come in and I tell them, hey, I know this is a season in your life. You're a rookie. It's all brand new, but find something you love doing and go give it away for free so that you have some purpose or something to do when you get out of here. Or don't take the downtime to go to school. There's a lot of incentives to further your education, and they'll pay for it. And it's like, take advantage of those things, because you never know. You never know what's going to happen. But I'll tell you one thing, at some point you're going to retire. They're going to fill that seat with someone else. You're going to be remember that guy, and you're going to be remembered for the way you treat people. I always tell people, it doesn't matter how many awesome rigs you built or how much equipment you got, or, how many rookies you taught. It's about how you went about your daily bit and how you treated people. That's what people are going to remember. And go find something to do, because there's only so much golf and vacations you could take, before you're, sitting on the couch drinking too much and yelling at the wife. It's like, you gotta, go give something away for free. That's what I tell people. Find something you love doing, and you never know what's going to happen with that,
Did you keep the music going through your whole life?
Oh no. I've always been a music lover. Yeah. But, I listen to stuff now. It's funny, because I came to a certain point, probably about 5 years ago, where I went, every time I get in the car, I'm listening to the same songs I've been listening to since I was 16. You know what I mean? Like, Matty, do something else. So I listened to it. Like, I was listening to a book on the way up here, and I listened to a few podcasts. So I've been addicted to Sean Ryan. I just, not so much anymore. I have the little girl now, and my service dog. I used to, and I have friends at the House of Blues, and we kind of get a cool little spot up there. And so when I see a band that I like, I'll try and go watch some live music, but I'm not, no, maybe worship it at church on Sundays. That's about it.
Well, the stereotypical question as we wrap this up, any last pieces of advice you'd want to throw out to a veteran first responder, especially somebody struggling?
I would say, you may feel like you're alone. The hardest thing to do is, when you're in that space, is to pick up the phone and admit that you're scared and you can't do it on your own. But I promise you that will be the best decision you ever make in your life, and just be open and willing to accept the help. It's gonna be scary, and it's not gonna feel good, but in the long run, there are people out there, and more now that are willing to help you and to get you the right resources, and to at least sit with you, hold space for you while you need to grieve or whatever you need to do. It's not, there's no shame in it. So pick up the phone, go on the computer, research, look for different retreats, or call me, fireman_Matty is my Instagram, and I'm always taking, I'll answer your DM and I'll give you my phone number, and we'll go from there. If all you do is just pick up the phone and talk to somebody, If that's all you can do it, you know? So yeah, that would be my advice. Daily practice. You know, that's a little advanced, but well, I mean, for me, the guys told me just get up and make your bed, dude. Get up, make your bed. Brian Haggerty told me on the phone, get up, make your bed, and don't get back in it until it's time to go to bed at night. And I'm like, that was a lot, you know, and I'm gonna teach you how to meditate. Maybe you do this meditation, just do that. And that's where I started, from suicidal to 5.5 days to making my bed and meditating 20 minutes twice a day. That's all I did for months. And I was like, oh, maybe I can get into that recovery program. So daily practice. And if that's just getting out of bed, making your bed and getting outside, just do that. So, yeah.
I appreciate your time. Thanks for sharing your story.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, brother. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate you watching. But before you go, if you like the video, please hit that subscribe button. Also, any comments are appreciated. Thank you.